So we're going to talk about process safety management of highly hazardous chemicals. Just to give you a little background, I've managed 2 PSM sites, one that dealt with trichlorosilane and hydrogen fluoride and anhydrous ammonia. And the other one that I dealt with, that I managed, was it dealt with explosive materials. And so as a experienced PSM person in this realm, I can tell you that there's a lot of documentation that goes into this program. So what we're going to talk about today is the 1910-119 standard. We'll talk a little bit about what PSM is. We'll go through a little bit of the history, how it came about. We'll look at a couple incidences, one that actually happened here in our backyard. We'll go through the 14 elements of PSM. They're pretty extensive. I truncated them a little bit, shortened them down, and just we're going to look at the highlights. We'll take a look at the frequency timelines for compliance. There's a lot of parts and pieces in here that have to be done at certain times and at certain frequencies. And so then we'll, like John had mentioned, we'll do a section, or we'll have time for Q&A. So what is PSM, Process Safety Management? Basically, it's the standard that OSHA has implemented in order to minimize the consequences of catastrophic releases when it comes to flammable liquids, explosive chemicals, reactive chemicals, and they don't have to necessarily be a liquid. These chemicals can be a solid as well. It can be gases, and you'll find all those chemicals in Appendix A at the very back of the 119 standard, and they have a specific threshold that will throw you into the PSM standard. And when we talk about the thresholds, we'll talk about, I have a little snippet of the Appendix A, and we'll look at the differences depending on how hazardous the chemical is. But basically, it establishes all the requirements on how to use them in a process, if you're going to be storing them, if you're an actual manufacturer of the chemical. And these are all the laws, rules, and regulations on how to do that effectively and safely. When they talk about the processes, it can include flammable liquids and gases in the excess of 10,000 pounds or more. And I talked about the threshold quantity, or the TQ, of those hazardous chemicals. There's about 130, give or take. And it's interesting because every year OSHA looks at the list, and depending on any incidents that have happened, they can raise or lower the threshold quantity. As we manufacture new chemicals, they'll look at that and decide whether it should be added to the Appendix A list, and then what would be the threshold quantity for that. So it's kind of an ever-changing list, but here lately they haven't added any new ones. If you have any toxic or reactive chemicals, when I talk about the PSM site where we had explosives on site, that was one that fell under the reactive part or the reactive characteristic. And basically, all those things, when you talk about explosive stuff, they actually don't have a threshold quantity for explosivity. It is more of, if you have, one pellet or one tablet of explosive material, you automatically fall into the PSM standard. So here is a little snippet of the Appendix A, and you can see that it gives you not only the name of the chemical, but it also gives the CAS number, and the CAS number is important, and then the threshold quantity. And let's take an example like chlorine. Okay, you have a threshold quantity of 1,500 pounds, and all that is in pounds. And 1,500 pounds is not a lot, especially if you're dealing with, let's say, water treatment and you're using chlorine on site. If you're storing it, if it's introduced into your process, if it's in excess of 1,500 pounds or more, then you're going to fall into the PSM program. You take something like phosgene, and it's only got a threshold quantity of 100 pounds, which isn't a lot. And you can see the different various threshold quantities there. Bromine trifluoride has 15,000 pounds. And so they're all over the map when it comes to the threshold quantity.